Welcome to the CEO Launch Podcast.
We are a dynamic mother-daughter duo bringing you personality, insights, and practical advice from two different generations of entrepreneurship.
We aren't just mother and daughter. We are also best friends and business partners.
I've watched my mom help thousands of entrepreneurs start the businesses of their dreams, including me. And now it's your turn. Welcome, CEO Launch family. And we are happy and excited to have you all here for episode 17. Last week, we talked about being true to who you are. And this week, we're going to discuss something that's really important and may even be a little controversial for some people and business owners out there in the world. But this week, we're going to talk about how practice does not make perfect. And it doesn't make perfect because perfection is not real, especially in business.
Yes, I definitely agree. And hopefully we don't step on your toes too hard this week. But we have been thinking about this episode and we were trying to come up with a story because we know that our listeners like to hear our stories, and our stories are a great analogy to helping us bridge some of the takeaways that we have. And so, full disclosure, guys, for a minute, we didn't have a story.
We did not have a story.
We were racking our brains so much that we were almost ready to break the mold and not do what we normally do as far as having a story. But last night, while I was taking a bath, it came to me. We got our story.
All the best ideas always come like in the shower or while you're not actually working. So very excited that we have a story. But listen, if it didn't come to her, then we were just going to do what we needed to do because perfection isn't real. And sometimes you just got to pull the trigger. But let's get into the story. So what's our story for this week?
So the story for this week is going to be the story of me going to Cheney University. So many of you know that I'm a graduate of Cheney University of Pennsylvania. So the part of the story that some of you don't know is I'm originally from Florida and I live in Atlanta now, but I graduated high school in Florida. And my basketball coach in high school is the person who connected me with Cheney. So I was in contact with the basketball coach there, and the plan was that I was going to come play on the basketball team and go to school at Cheney. Well, it was a lot of miscommunications. And so anybody that went to a HBCU, you know how stuff kind of falls through the cracks. Can you relate?
All of the cracks, every single crack. God bless our HBCU spirit, but the cracks.
Yeah, I think anybody that graduates from HBCUs, the resilience that you have after enduring some of the stuff that we endured at HBCUs just makes us so much better in life. But anyway, so it was stuff falling through the cracks, and I had a lot of communication issues when it came down to it. And be honest, guys, I was scared. I lived in Florida. This school was in Pennsylvania. So let me just tell you, in South Florida, the coldest it gets is 70 degrees.
And y'all act like it's a real winter when that happens.
Yes, like I lived in Atlanta for a couple of years. I did live in Atlanta, so I had seen snow, I'd seen it. But even Atlanta's winter is not the same as that. So I was afraid about that. I was afraid of a lot of my friends were going to state schools. And so at least when they went to school, they were going to school with people that they knew. So I'm like, okay, I'm about to travel. I don't even know how many miles that is. I have to Google it. But I'm about to travel this long way. It's like a 16, 18-hour car drive. And I don't know anybody. Well, I did know one person. There was one other person from my school that went to Cheney. But we were like not close. Like I knew who he was. In fact, our grandmothers were like best friends. But yeah, that was it. So I was scared, and I had made up my mind that I wasn't going. So much so that I said I was going to the Air Force. I took the ASVAB. I scored really high on it. I had recruiters ready to sign me up. And my mom was like, no, ma'am, you going to Cheney and I'm taking you. We leave it in the morning. So she was like, we legit drove. She drove me. She was living in Atlanta then because I begged her to let me go back to Florida so I could graduate with my friends. So I was living in Florida with my great grandma, and she was in Atlanta. So I was in Atlanta thinking that I was just going to come chill with her and then go and kind of figure life out. And my mom was like, yeah, we leaving tomorrow. So she packed up her truck and drove me all the way to Pennsylvania. I got there, I got registered, and let me tell you, I was so afraid of going to school, going to this unknown place, going so far away, and it ended up being the best decision that I ever made. It's like the best 4 years of my life was at Cheyney University. I wanted to share that story because I think it ties in really close to some of the things that we're going to talk about today as we were sharing this episode. We talk about practice doesn't make perfect. So a lot of times we want things to be perfect before we actually do it, right? So for me, I didn't want to do it because, I didn't know anything about Pennsylvania. The furthest north that I ever been was Atlanta. So I didn't know anything about it. So I was afraid. And a lot of times I think that people don't get started because they're afraid. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. First, I want to say shout out to Grandma, because moms have a way of just letting that fear release from you. Even when you are super afraid, they have that superpower where they make it so that things are okay, and the things that you thought were going to be the worst thing in the world, they'll figure it out for you. So good job, Grandma. And I also think, like you said, a lot of people don't want to start things because it's not the perfect situation. But a lot of times those perfect situations aren't really what you need. On the topic of HBCUs, when I went to Howard, I don't think anybody really knows this, I didn't get my Howard acceptance until June, I feel like.
It was late.
Yeah, it was really, actually, no. I did get accepted into Howard. I got accepted into Howard maybe like March, April-ish. The issue was I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to pay for it, even though I had gotten all those scholarships. And I could have been like, okay, I don't have all the money right now, so I'm just not going to go because I don't have all the money. And then in June, Howard called me and was like, are you going to sign for the scholarship or what? I was like, girl, what are you talking about? What scholarship? They were like, the scholarship, we trying to give you money. I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And that was the scholarship that closed the gap. Even thinking about with me starting graduate school, I got my acceptance to go to Bowie 2 days before school started, not even business days. I think it was 2 days. My acceptance letter was for the wrong program and it was late. So I'm just like, okay, so school starts tomorrow. This wasn't the program that I signed up for, and you want me to do this? How does this work? But thankfully, it was people that were supportive in the administration that was like, we're going to get you situated. We're going to get you in classes and things like that. And school has been great so far. I can only imagine like not doing this program. And I'm sure you feel the exact same way about who would you have been if you went to the Air Force instead of going to Cheyney? Like a completely different person. And I think a lot of business owners, we get so trapped in this idea that we think stuff is supposed to be 100% perfect before we press play, and that's not the case. A lot of times, just the experience alone gives you what you need to get better and better and better. And we said it already, perfection isn't real. You're never going to be perfect at something. You're never going to be perfect at something.
And the time is never going to be perfect. That's the other thing that I think a lot of people need to recognize is that there is no such thing as perfect timing. I've said this on this podcast, and I know I've said it when I've spoken before. I started my business 2 months after 9/11. And some people are like, well, what does accounting have to do with 9/11? Well, 9/11 affected the accounting industry tremendously. And so, because I can remember a time I used to do temp work, and before 9/11 as a temp, I used to have choices like, nah, I don't want that one. I'll take this one. I'll take this one. And after 9/11, those jobs were scarce. It was really, really hard to come by. And so we're in a pandemic now, and there are probably people who are sitting around waiting on the pandemic to end before they start their business. And there's no perfect time. There's really no perfect time.
It's a mix between people create this idea of a perfect time because it gives us a sense of safety. right? Like we can settle in this idea that it just wasn't the right time. And because it wasn't the right time, then I don't have to do it because this needs to happen and that needs to happen and that needs to happen. And once all of those things come together, then I'll be able to do it. But I think about a lot of stuff. Like I think about when I bought the house. I had only been working. I don't even think I worked for a year when I decided to buy a house. I didn't have a certain number of money in my account. Like it was just kind of like, I'm just going to do this. Like I want to buy a house. Let's figure out how to do it. And I was able to get it. Same thing when I got my car. I was just like, okay, I'm tired of taking the bus. Let's do something else. Let's switch it up. And I happened to get an email that was like, so do you want a car or not? And I was like, actually, yes, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. So in a sense, that was perfect timing because my credit union had emailed me with the right interest rate. But it wasn't on my mind the day before. So there are opportunities that come to you and you have to be ready to accept those opportunities as they come and be open to the fact that sometimes the timing doesn't feel perfect and sometimes you're not going to have like an excess amount of time to get things done. Sometimes you just got to pull the trigger and you got to get it done.
And sometimes you can get clear on what you really want when you actually do it. Because some people say practice make perfect, and we say practice does not make perfect. But what practice does is when you actually get out there and actually do it, you find out real quick, like the stuff you don't want to do, the stuff that you like doing, the people that you like working with, the people that you don't like working with. And so if you keep on trying to wait and try to figure everything out, you won't be able to. You won't until you actually try. It's kind of like cooking. So you guys know I like to cook. And sometimes with cooking, I may find a recipe on Pinterest, but I'll probably alter the recipe. So I'll look at it and be like, nah, I think I'm going to put 2 cups of wine instead of 1. Or I'm going to change the recipe up a little bit and I'm going to add some more stuff to it. It's an experiment. When I do that, it's like sometimes it comes out really good. And sometimes it's like, okay, next time I need to put a little bit more cream in there or a little bit. But that's what happens when you get started. When you get started, then you know how to adjust and how to move with that. So ready to jump to our takeaways?
Yeah, this is one where we've kind of spoken about this before. Sometimes you just need to know step 1. And it's okay not to know the next steps because like you said, just doing things gives you practice and understanding of like what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, what is something that you want to continue with, and what are the things that you need to leave behind. And you can't get that when you are sitting around making your master plan in your notebook. It's not the same as actually doing something, actually feeling what that experience, what that service, what that product, whatever, what that actually looks like for you in your business and even your life. You in your life. You may be sitting here, it's a hobby you want to try, but you're not sure that you can do it. And you're waiting for the perfect time to get some extra time and some extra this and some extra that. And you just need to do it and just figure it out as you go along.
Absolutely. I can't even imagine, like you said, what my life would have been like if I didn't go to Cheney, because I feel like everything that I am and everything that I have is a result of the experience that I got from Cheney. It was foundational in my success today. And so I'm just glad that I had my mom to, as we say, snatch my edges and get me together and like, girl, listen, I don't want to hear any of that. Pack your little bag. I ain't have that much stuff. Pack your little bag and let's go. The next takeaway I want to talk about is how if you're starting a business or if you're in a business, your business plan is a living document. And what I mean by that is it is going to be ever evolving. This business plan is going to constantly change. I know for me, I've been in business for 19 years and my business has been constantly changing. Like I changed some stuff a few weeks ago as far as the way that the business is set up or whatever. And it doesn't change the name of the business. It doesn't change my branding. It doesn't change my website. But there are things that are behind the scenes that will happen in your business that are constantly changing. And so I want you to think about your business plan as a living document because I don't want you to get stuck in this is the only thing that I'm going to do. Think about the businesses now with COVID that have had to pivot as a result of everything that's going on. They couldn't continue to operate business as usual. So think about it from that standpoint. Your business plan is a living document. It's not finite.
And it's important to think about the fact that you get to choose how it lives. Like, you make that decision. Nobody gives you a setup kit on this is how your business is supposed to go. That's your decision. That's likely why you got into business. So making sure that you act like it. Act like you can make decisions and you can make changes. And as important as your customers are, you are the one that's doing the work and providing the services and the products. So you get to make the choices on how you want to move and maneuver around. And I think our third point is the biggest point that we've been harping on this entire episode, but it's just that perfection isn't real. And while practice does not make perfect, it definitely makes progress. And you have to constantly be moving towards a specific goal and just growing on what those goals go to. So it's like, if you get 1, then your next goal is to get 3, and then you get 10, and then you get 20, and just keep building on that rather than being so focused on it has to be like this or it has to look like that. The best advice that one of my therapists has given me was, she says, you have to take should out of the vocabulary. Once you take should out of your vocabulary, you stop wondering and thinking about the conditions that you feel like they have to exist, rather than accepting the conditions that currently exist. So instead of saying, I should have $15,000 before I start my business, you could just say, I got $15 and I'm gonna figure it out on how I wanna start my business. But accepting that reality is super important, and that's what's gonna get you to move and not be so stuck in the coulda, woulda, shouldas.
Yeah. So those are our takeaways for today. We're not going to say it because we had fun. We know you guys did too. You're still listening. Thank you so much for being here. As always, we appreciate you so, so much. And join us next week because we are going to talk about some of our business pet peeves.
Yeah, next week's episode is going to be really funny. It's a good story behind where the inspiration of this episode came from. So make sure you check it out for sure.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, join our online community, The Efficient CEO Movement on Facebook. Join us there where we will continue the conversation, provide you with tips, support, and advice as you build your entrepreneurial journey.
And follow us on social media at The CEO Launch. And don't forget to take off.
This is a Clear Word production.